Could this be the new affordable force feedback yoke we've all been waiting for? And has Moza got a true market disruptor on their hands, especially when compared to some of the other offerings out there? Well, let's find out in this video today. Welcome back to the channel, folks. I really appreciate you being here. This is my review of Moza's brand new AY90 force feedback base alongside their new yoke with a very fancy screen. But what are we looking at here? Well, in essence, Moza are going all in on trying to produce the most affordable, high quality force feedback yoke we've seen to date. But does it really hit that mark? Well, let's find out in this video today, and let's talk about the specification whilst unboxing it so you can see what you're going to get for your money. And talking of the price, this weighs in at 399 USD for the base, that's 379 British pounds, and for the MFY Pro yoke, that's going to set you back 299 USD or 279 pounds. That is substantially cheaper than the competition, which got me thinking, how have they done this without cost cutting somewhere? Well, in terms of build quality overall, it feels pretty good. It's not up to the standard though of the AY210. Don't get me wrong though, it feels pretty solid. All of the buttons and switches feel very nice, apart from, I have to say, the levers for the engine and flaps, which do feel quite loose, especially since it's brand new as well, and just feel a little bit on the cheap side. And that goes also for the base of the unit, which is a hardened plastic rather than the metal finish you get with the 210. Now, these things won't really affect the longevity of the device, but it's just that kind of premium fit and finish that you are losing out on a little bit compared to its bigger brother. However though, this is much cheaper, especially if you go for the standard yoke. It brings the price down even more. And it's also a lot smaller, which means this could feasibly fit better onto a desk or even a motion rig because it's not quite so long. I'll show you that a bit later on as well when I compare them back to back in terms of size. In terms of the attachment and how it feels, it's exactly what you'd expect from Moza. Very, very nice. And I really do actually find this new screen quite intriguing because there's a lot of potential here for adding different screens for different aircraft, like bespoke gauges and avionics panels. That could be very useful, especially for those who don't fly in VR. Now, there's some things I really need to talk about, but before that, just to let you know, Moza did send me this yoke for review purposes. But as you know from this channel, I give you the full picture, and that does not make any difference to what I think. And Moza don't get prior access to this video or to vet it in any way before it goes live. So this being a cheaper alternative to the AY210 means there is one thing that I have noticed, and that is a very slight stepping or cogging effect. This is to be expected at this price point, and honestly it doesn't really affect me too much in the time I've used it so far. I also think this could be improved in the firmware, and the reason for that is I had the same issues with my flightsim.com CLS-60 when it was first released, and it has improved over time. But there's no getting away from the fact that for me personally, it does not feel as smooth as the AY210, especially when in general aviation aircraft, when doing fine movements. The roll axis in particular, you definitely feel that notching or stepping effect. Now, the elevator feels a lot smoother and there's not a huge amount in it. I'm being quite nitpicky here, but that's what you expect from this channel, and I think it's important to mention it. Now, to go a bit further than this, my curiosity got the better of me and I decided to take the cover off both the AY90 and AY210 to see the differences in how they're put together. Well, the internals are a little bit different, particularly the gearing. If you notice with the AY90, there are some plastic parts and it's gear driven. Rather with the AY210, it is belt driven with all metal construction, which probably accounts for the smoothness. But really the AY210 is getting into that enthusiast sector and should feel a lot better given the price difference. Now this base did take a while to get to me, so that means I'm making this review quite late on before going away on holiday, because of course it is the summertime here in the UK, and that's why I also want to give a massive shout out to Tom over at Simblitz, a fantastic YouTube channel. He did provide me with some of this B-roll you're looking at here to save me time, very precious time actually, because I'm now away on holiday. So please do check his link in the notes below and give him plenty of likes and subs. His channel really is superb. Anyway, back to the video. As you can see here, I'm using it with the very nice G1000 display as well, which I've also got a review of on the channel. It's a very, very nice unit this is, and really makes even the most simplistic desk layouts like mine start to look like a professional training environment. It really does astonish me what's available at home now. But let's just talk about the throw and of course the specification of both of these yokes, because I want to compare it a bit to the 210 as well as the CLS-60 as well. But in terms of the actual travel, well, the difference is very clear. The CLS-60 has around 165 millimeters of pitch travel compared to the 210, which has 150 millimeters of travel, which is quite a difference when you compare it to the AY90, which has 95 millimeters. And let me tell you, you definitely notice as a GA pilot or bush pilot that extra feel and finesse on flare is noticeable, but you can dial it back a little bit in the very clever MOZA cockpit software to counteract that so it's not too sensitive on that very vital flare. But what about the force feedback? That's the exciting and more important part of this video. I'm not going to go too much into these specs, you can read that online, but basically in a nutshell, you're getting with this yoke 90 newtons of push-pull force with 4.2 newton meters of roll. Comparing that to the bigger brother, the AY210, it has a more powerful 9 newton meters of torque in the roll axis with 210 newtons in push-pull force. That's the pitch axis or the elevator. And if we compare that to the CLS-60, that's not the 120, which has a lot more power. The CLS-60 has 60 newtons of pitch force with 4 newton meters of roll force. So really, the 210 feasibly has a lot more power than both of them. But in practice, and this is where I find it quite interesting, is when you're flying, actually flying and not just looking up, specifications, you notice it more in the roll axis than in the elevator. Overall, it's still plenty of power, and especially for someone coming into this brand new, you're going to be blown away with connecting with your aircraft for the first time. You still have that feeling here. But it is the roll axis that I notice it the most. For example, when speeding up and you feel the weight on your ailerons, or perhaps the vibration or thud on landing, it's just not quite as powerful as you would expect from its bigger brother, and that is completely expected. But I do think for most of you out there, it's definitely going to be enough. And I've been thinking, even with someone who has a motion rig, I've already got quite a lot of forces going on in the haptic seat. Something like this can just kind of complement the force feedback. It doesn't have to be so over the top in order to feel the aircraft correctly through your hands. And that brings me to probably the most important aspect of all of these devices. How do they feel and how do they replicate real flying? Well, I will say that I still feel the flightsim.com CLS-60 kind of just feels a bit more realistic than both of them, even though it doesn't have as much force on paper as the 210. It somehow just gives you that more of a feeling of being connected to control surfaces and that sort of pressure against the air. I also feel the hardware trim, while the MOZA cockpit software and firmware has really improved over the years, and by the way the AY90 does have hardware trim, it doesn't work quite as well or as intuitive and natural as the CLS-60. But let me just show you again the size difference. It's astronomical. It's hilariously different. The CLS-60 is basically a real replica size of a Cessna yoke. The 210 again is a bit more slimmer in design, but it's very long, while the AY90 is the perfect size for a yoke, especially for force feedback. It really does fit the bill nicely. And actually, do I think the forces are enough here? Yes, I do. You still feel all of the engine vibration, the bumps on landing, whether you're, taxiing on grass, tarmac, you feel all the bumps, all the turbulence, the prop wash, all of the things that you'd expect from the MOZA 210 and other force feedback yokes are present and correct here as well. This is early days. I'm expecting bigger things here for this yoke, especially once the firmware and software matures. I think what MOZA are doing here is quite phenomenal, and actually they really are pushing what they can achieve for this price point to the absolute limit. I can't see anything out there competing in this price bracket, and if I had £1 for every time I had a comment from people saying I wish force feedback would get a lot cheaper, well, I appreciate this is still not cheap, but if you think about what this actually is trying to achieve, and it is a high-end yoke with that very feeling of being inside an aircraft, then actually this is a very good value for money. Few things I don't really like, of course, is mainly the build quality in certain areas, but then that's only a very minor gripe. Perhaps the biggest point of contention for me is the stepping or cogging effect when doing very small roll maneuvers. But given the price point, it's probably something that is to be expected. But it is there, and it's especially noticeable when you compare it to the AY210. A major plus point though is its small footprint. This fits on a desk very, very easily. Anyway folks, I think that will do for this video. I will be showing this yoke in future videos because it's going to live on my motion rig for the foreseeable future anyway, so I can get to know it even more. So any questions, anything you'd like me to test and try, do let me know in the comments below. But for now, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon. Take care and bye for now.